Okay, this is new, but it's very manageable. The half-angle formulas. And these are also very useful. And I think I can show you why. Seems to be mostly about cosine, just taking a rough view of it here. Mostly about cosine. Notice that cosine gives itself the plus, and it gives sine the negative. Just more cosine behavior. If we're trying to develop the personality of cosine. This is kind of strange down here for tangent. I guess one good thing is it has the same thing on top, and then it has sine on the bottom. That's weird. But anyway, and there's no square root. There's a square root for both the sine and the cosine. There's no square root for tangent. So kind of strange. We'll have to try to remember that. And the signs of these guys depend on the quadrant, obviously, where that lies. So we are going to want to think about our reference triangles. So find the exact value of sine of 105. Well, here's the thing. Sine of 105 can be expressed like this. We can say the sine of 210 divided by 2. And while we may not know anything about 105, we do know some things about 210. 210 is 30 degrees past the x-axis. So we have a 30-degree angle in quadrant 3. And then that means this is 1 and square root of 3 and 2. And everything comes together there. Whereas nothing was coming together for 105. We're quite pleased with 210. And that's what we get to use in the formula. 210. Okay? And we say, well, I mean, the cosine is negative, so we got to remember that it's negative. So we end up adding instead of subtracting because two negative signs. Okay, but all in all, very manageable. And then we get kind of a weird answer, I guess you'd say, a radical inside of a radical. But we can live with that, and we can certainly find it on our calculator. We get a good estimate of it, and or we can just leave it like that, which is just fine, and we will just leave it like that. So let's take a look at this, and we say, 75. Another way to write that would be 150 over 2, right? 150 degrees over 2. So let's do that. Let's say we're going to do this for the sine, the cosine, and the tangent, all three. Okay, so the sine of 150 over 2 is equal to square root of the whole thing, right? Look up here. I was just going to do, for a minute, I was just going to do it for one piece, but no. It's the whole thing, so I better draw it out first. I better say 1 minus the cosine of, not 150 over 2, but 150, okay, over the whole thing over 2. All right. And so we're going to say, and also notice it does say plus or minus, so we'll just be mindful. Okay, so what do we get here? We say, if we need to draw it out, here's where it shows up. It shows up here, 30 degrees in quadrant 2 is 150. Okay, so we get 1 square root of 3 and 2. All right? So we would say, what are we going to get here? I'll keep the same color. We'll say 1 minus, this is cosine, so it's going to be minus again, so I'm just going to say plus. I hope that's okay. And the adjacent is square root of 3 over the hypotenuse 2 over 2. Okay, and it's the square root of that. But I don't want to leave a complex fraction inside there, so I'm going to multiply everything by 2 over 1. And so let's see what I get. I get 2 plus the square root of 3 over 4. Okay? There we go. And, I could verify this with my calculator. If I say, I know I have a calculator, so I can say The sine of 75 is 0.9659. And then I say, okay, what is 2 square root of 3? We add that. And we divide by 4. And then we take the square root, and we get the exact same thing. Exact same thing. Okay, and we kept the sign straight by just thinking about where it was. So that's what we'll go with that. And then we want to do the cosine of 150 over 2. And that's going to be equal to, very similar, except that now it's 1 plus that. Okay? That's the only difference. And so we get, well, now we're going to pay for the negative business. And we're going to say, same thing happens. And so now we're going to say, well, it's kind of predictable based on what we've already seen. Oops, I put a positive sign, meant to put a negative. So that's the only difference. And then finally, admittedly, the strangest one of all, which is no square root sign. We're going to keep the same top, okay? The same top. So we're going to say 1 minus cosine of 150 over the sine, which is strange. The sine of 150. Okay, so that's definitely different. And we'll say 1 minus minus, that's not going to change any. So same thing as we got up on the first line. But on the bottom, let's see, the sine of 150, we go back up to our reference triangle here and we look at that. The sine is, well, that's going to be positive because I'm in quadrant 2 and the sine is positive in quadrant 2. Oops, I hit this search bar again. Okay. So, it's 1/2. It's positive 1/2. Alright, so when I multiply top and bottom by 2 this time, my bottom disappears. And I get 2 plus the square root of 3. And that's it. So, anyway, it's just recipes. We plug in the numbers and we get what we get. And we don't really need a calculator, though it's kind of nice to confirm that we get the right answer with the calculator.